Hello and welcome. Good evening. My name is Leslie Rolfe. I am a member of the May 30th Alliance. The May 30th Alliance is a direct action organization located in Rockford, Illinois, that is dedicated to the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in Winnebago County. I'm here with Kay, a fellow member of the May 30th Alliance. It has been quite the last few hours. This has been another notable day in the history of Winnebago County, and that is because today there was yet another justified ruling that came down from the Winnebago County State's Attorney and from the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force concerning the murder of a citizen of this community by a member of law enforcement. Specifically, Faustin Guaitigo, an African immigrant, was murdered by Joseph Brulard inside of his home. Joseph Brulard being a Winnebago County Sheriff Deputy. And yet again, it has been found to be justified, this act of police terrorism, which led to the murder. I think that is important to point out that since 1990, there have been 50 plus incidents of officer involved shootings or in custody deaths, and 50 plus incidents of officer involved shootings or in custody deaths in Winnebago County. And each one of those officer involved shootings or in custody deaths have been justified. There has not been a single one that was not justified. That comes about to a two, it averages out to about two every year. Twice a year this happens, and each time it's justified and the officer is sent back out onto the streets. So what we're going to do today is just have a critical conversation about not only just the justified of Faustin Guaitigo, but also the looming justified of the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr., the looming justified of the police pursuit that led to the death of Raymond Jackson, and the looming specter of the next person who will be shot down and gunned down in the streets by law enforcement in Winnebago County and Rockford, Illinois, and their family will have to hear the word justified when it comes to the lynching or attempted lynching of their loved one. So before we dive into that, I want to do the introduction that we do regularly here on Live from Occupy City Hall. And that starts by saying we came out here as an organization on October 3rd, 2020, after on October 2nd, 2020, Tyrus Jones, an unarmed black man, was shot by Rockford Police Department Officer Owen McGinnis while he was running away. After Tyrus Jones was shot by Officer Owen McGinnis, no more than 2 months, about 2 months, 2.5 months later, Owen McGinnis, Dominic McNeese, he was shot by Dominic McNeese. 2.5 months later, Dominic McNeese will be found justified in the attempted murder of Tyrus Jones. He will be found justified in that, and he will go right back out to work to endanger the lives of more members of this community. On January 5th, 2021, Denzel Duvant was beat mercilessly at the hands of multiple officers of the Rockford Police Department, and one of those officers was Officer Dominic McNeese, who had shot Tyrus Jones just months prior. Our occupation continued through all of these different incidents and events of police terrorism. Our occupation continued through April 10th, 2021, when Faustin Guaitigo was murdered inside of his home by Winnebago County Sheriff Deputy Joseph Brulard and his cohorts. Our occupation continued through April 11th, 2021, when Jose Gonzalez Jr. will be shot while running away by Officer Owen McGinnis. And our occupation continued through April 25th, 2021, when Raymond Jackson will lose his life after the Rockford Police Department engaged in a high-speed pursuit on the busy streets in our city, yet and again endangering every motorist and every pedestrian that was in the area, and that manifested in the car that they were chasing crashing into Raymond Jackson, leading to the death of Raymond Jackson and the critical injury of the children that was in the car along with Raymond Jackson. So we want to say justice for Tyrus Jones, justice for Denzel Duvant, justice for Jose Gonzalez Jr., justice for Faustin Guaitigo, and justice for Raymond Jackson. We speak about each one of these events and incidents of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice with the understanding that we cannot advocate for justice for one victim without advocating for justice for all victims. all victims, and with the understanding that it may be some people who have empathy and understanding for Tyrus Jones who don't have that empathy and understanding for Denzel Duvant, or people who have empathy and understanding for Denzel Duvant who do not have that empathy and understanding for Jose Gonzalez Jr. or for Faustin Guaitigo. And it becomes our responsibility and our duty at the point in which people have understanding and empathy for us to extrapolate out how each one of these incidents directly and indirectly affects the other events and are connected to the other events, and how every act of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice which takes place on the streets in Rockford, Illinois, directly or indirectly affects us as members of this community. So it is from that point that I would like to begin to dive into the events of today. And so I will say where I was at. I'll begin this by talking about where I was at when I heard that the justified ruling came down. I was here at City Hall, in the front of City Hall, and one of the things that have been going on is that I have been chalking the back of City Hall. Leaving messages about police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. You can donate at Cash App, $ May 30th Alliance. You can donate at Venmo at May 30th Alliance. You can donate. PayPal is May 30th Alliance at protonmail.com. We need to have to get back at get better at sharing some of the places where money can be donated to. But those are all places money can be donated. You can also drop money off down here. And so I was here in front of City Hall when the justified findings came out. I have been chalking messages about police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in the back of City Hall. I have been doing it for maybe about 6 hours. I have been having this feeling the past couple of weeks that we had the specter of this investigation looming over our heads. I had just been arrested a couple of days ago. Ari was arrested about a week ago. We're pretty deep into the city market campaign that's going on. The courts and people being reprimanded for violations of conditions of release. All of these things have added and made it so that I have been in a place in which I was feeling the burden of all the things that was going on right now very heavily. And that on top of the events that took place yesterday, where myself, Rhonda Greer, Tony Turner, and other people, and Joshua Patterson and other people sat and we spoke about Black unity. And leaving that conversation, I felt very much. I felt deeper within that burden of and that specter of all of these different things that were going on. This felt like another one of those things. And so so today, as I was sort of trying to work through some of those things by being in the back of City Hall and leaving messages in chalk, listening to Malcolm X speeches, I took a small break and I was on my phone and I seen that the Winnebago County State's Attorney Jay Hanley was in the process of having a press conference. I seen that there was a breaking news story on WREX or WIFR, one or the other, that said that the murder of Faustin Guaitigo had been found to be justified. So I went to the WREX page and I began to watch the live and listen to some of the honestly ludicrous things at times that came out of the mouth of Jay Hanley, the state's attorney. I think that one of the things I do want to say is that some of the questions that were asked by the media were very good questions. I think that that's one of the things that has been happening is that the media have been asking some of the questions that need to be asked to try to get some of the answers that we need to get. And so as I sat and I watched these things, I was not surprised that the findings were justified. We, as an organization, have been involved only in one other Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force investigation. However, we have been investigating and looking into and researching multiple other Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force investigations, and each one of those task force investigations have been justified. And so, even though we have only been actively involved in one justification, we've dealt with families who have had to feel the pain and the trauma of hearing justified about the murder of their loved one, and we've again researched and read about these things, and so we fully expected that Faustin Guaitigo's murder would be justified, just as we fully expect Jose Gonzalez Jr.'s attempted murder and shooting down in the streets to be justified, and the high-speed pursuit that led to the death of Raymond Jackson to be justified. And until the culture and the climate changes in the city at the level which it needs to be, every other person who is victimized in the manner which Tyrus Jones, Faustin Guaitigo, Jose Gonzalez Jr., and Raymond Jackson have been victimized will all of their families and loved ones will have to hear that word justified and deal with the trauma that comes along with those things. And so even though I was not surprised by the justified ruling, I was still upset nonetheless. I was still bothered by nonetheless, especially because of some of the rhetoric that would come after the justified hearing, which justified finding, which I also believe is one of the things that is that makes this even more difficult for families, is because after justified is said, then the next thing that you have to hear is a dehumanizing of your loved one, a criminalizing, a stigmatizing of your loved one, as they try to prop up the person who has victimized your loved one in an effort to change the narrative. And that is exactly what happened with Faustin Guaitigo. As they justified the murder of Faustin Guaitigo, they criminalized Faustin Guaitigo, dehumanized Faustin Guaitigo, and stigmatized Faustin Guaitigo in an effort to boost up the image of Joseph Brulard, and in an effort to paint Joseph Brulard as a heroic figure and as an empathetic figure. And that has been the case each time that these things have happened in the city and in the county. And so those were some. That's where I was at. Some of my initial emotions and feelings when these things took place. He gonna put his lights on and try to go by. Oh, you gotta take a right. No turn signal. Cop, no turn signal. But so I will. I'll pass it over to Kay, and I'll let Kay sort of talk about where he was at when he found out that the justified rulings had came out, some of his emotions when he found out about the justified ruling, and then after that we'll sort of get into some of the specifics of the things that were said in the press conference too.
Good evening. Bless you. I was in a business meeting earlier today with a company discussing gaining access to some funding because of COVID relief and just some much needed funding in the African American community here at Rockford. That's where I saw the information on my phone, because I was with this company for most of the day. So I wasn't watching the news. I wasn't on social media. I can honestly say I wasn't shocked at the verdict. Not being from Rockford, I understand the animal that is Rockford, and I understand the white supremacist power structure that exists here. It existed prior to those that are in power now, but yet it is propped up, defended, and upheld by those that are in office. So people can't plead ignorance to say it doesn't exist. They admitted openly that it exists. The 400,000 is proof to admit, yes, the war on drugs has affected Rockford, Illinois, and the direct result of that is the percentage of the tax basis on the cannabis money. But then the telling point to that, the relevance of acknowledging it is one thing, but not attempting to dismantle the structure that perpetuates it is very telling also in Rockford. It was publicly announced and discussed and accepted that the war on drugs has affected Rockford, that it affects the police structure that exists. This is not about, we're not talking about one officer. And this is why it impacted me so deeply, because it's the structure that is being perpetuated. So when I looked at the case, I instantly thought about, it was a flood of emotions. I thought about the Winnebago Boone County Task Force saying, this was justified. And I just thought about them sitting amongst themselves, discussing it, saying, okay, what are the points to the officer's perception that makes this justifiable? And I immediately knew I had to come down. I went home, changed immediately, and I'm just angry. I'm angry. Um, I can honestly say I've been angry for the last year, justifiably so. With getting involved, I was provoked to anger, but I was provoked to constructive anger. Um, I believe that everyone involved, and I will always say this: everyone involved is their First Amendment right to free speech does not become negated just based on a person disagreeing with what anyone has to say. So I respect every single person that comes down to support this movement and everyone involved to speak freely and that their First Amendment rights are consistently upheld. Now, I when you said the emotions that I felt, anger. And I was already angry. I'm angry with the response of the black community in Rockford for consistently being silent for the last year. I'm angry for the white community in Rockford being consistently silent for the last year. I'm angry for the clergy, white and black, both being consistently silent for the last year. I'm angry for every black activist organization that exists in Rockford that says they're a black activist organization for not galvanizing a movement collectively and standing up with one collective voice. I'm angry. I'm angry.
I think that one of the things that was very one of the things that stuck out about the press conference, because after we speak about where we were at when we heard about the justified findings coming out, after we speak about the initial set of emotions that we have, I think that one of the next conversations to be had is the specifics about the press conference and the specifics about the findings and some of our reactions to the implications that those specifics have. And so I think the first thing that I want to start off by saying is that since the onset of Jay Hanley handling these the Winnebago Boone integrity, since the onset of Jay Hanley handling the murder of Faustin Guaitigo and the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr. and handling the investigation into those things, he has made error after error. And he said as much in the press conference when he said two of the things that's gotten him in trouble was trying to guess how much it would cost and then trying to guess a timeline. And nobody forced Jay Hanley to say how much it would cost, or nobody forced Jay Hanley to give a timeline. And then on top of those things, at the onset of this, Jay Hanley said every 2 Thursdays he would give an update on what was going on with the investigation into Faustin Guaitigo's murder and with the investigation into Jose Gonzalez Jr. shooting. And after 2 press conferences, he reneged on that. After 2 press conferences, he reneged on that. And then after that, his office, after reneging on that, the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force completed their investigation. It was a press release stating that their investigation was complete, and that's and along with that press release that stated that their investigation was complete, there was also a statement from Jay Hanley in his office that said that the findings of the investigation and his findings and his office findings will be released at the end of June. When the end of June came and June passed and the beginning of July came here, in the first couple days of July, he said, him and his office said, well, it's possible they won't be out to August. And they said that again in another press release that went out. And so just based off of things that Jay Hanley and his office have said of their own volition and own free will, we can see the incompetency which exists in this office. We can see the multiple errors that exist in doing something as simple as having a timeline. So how can we what up, what up, what up? So how can we trust that if this man is not competent enough and his administration and office is not competent enough to keep up with timelines, that they are competent enough to properly be assessing the information that is given to them in these situations? And so that is something that has to be held against Jay Hanley. That is something that has to be held against his administration. No one forced Jay Hanley and his administration to say that they would have a press conference every 2 weeks on Thursday. They said that of their own volition, and they did not keep their word on that. No one forced Jay Hanley and his administration to say that they would have the findings released at the end of June. And they did not do that. Nobody forced their hand to do that, and they did not do it as they said. They reneged and went back on their word. Nobody forced Jay Hanley to say that they would have these findings and this investigation completed and released in August. Which, as it turns out, as we sit here, since he says it'll be 3 more weeks for the findings of Jose Gonzalez Jr. to be released. That means that his statement that in August these things will be completed and wrapped up was also untrue and also false. And again, it was not a statement that he was forced to make. It was one that he chose to make of his own volition. And we have to keep receipts on the state's attorney's office and on the state's attorney's administration. We have to keep receipts on the law enforcement, and we have to keep receipts in general on these institutions in this city and this county if we ever want to get to a point where we can begin to change those things. So for me, that is the beginning of the conversation about the specific press conference that happened today. It begins with press conferences that happened before. It continues with press conferences that never happened, that Jay Hanley and his office said would happen, and it continues on with findings being released on days that they or at the time they said would happen that they did not keep up with. Up until this point, Jay Hanley has reneged on his word. Him and his administration has reneged on their word at every turn when it comes to these issues. So that was one of my initial thoughts from the press conference. What were some of your thoughts from the press conference specifically?
My first thought from the press conference is that every single press conference in Rockford regarding a shooting sets a precedent. I'll say that again. Every single shooting with every press conference, it sets a precedent in Rockford. Every shooting helps to gauge the temperature of the black community. Because in life, there's the universal cause and effect. When you have the effect of a trial being released publicly, whether people want to admit it or not, people pause.
Not trial.
With the findings, people wait to see if there's any response from the community. Whether they say it publicly or not, it's the nature of the moment to see if there's going to be a response. That's my initial feelings was that everyone involved was waiting to gauge the temperature of the black community in Rockford based on these findings. And I think that's very that is it goes in part with every single finding that is that they follow up with a press conference. It there's always a cause and effect based on their initial feelings of a response from the community at large. Based on just the overall tone I felt. Now I'm sure people will say in the comments otherwise, but this is how I felt by gauging his body language, by gauging his speech pattern. I felt that he had an air of arrogance. That him fully interpreting what the police union has approved for the RPD handbook, understanding him, this isn't him not understanding this, him understanding the clarity of the language of the law. He stressed that multiple times, the law, and what the RPD handbook says in black and white. And you can pull this up online yourself and read it verbatim. It basically states that based on an officer's perception and what he feels, he has the ability to utilize how he feels in a situation, which is an abstract, which is it's not a basis of factual information. It's based on his perception in a moment, which can be completely warped and not realistic to anyone else except him. That based on an officer's perception of that moment, it can justify the use of deadly force. And when he focused, if you go back and you pull it up and watch it yourself, you'll see him pinpoint that law, that statute in the RPD handbook based on the officer having the ability to utilize his feelings of perception even to trump any body cam footage. Because he stressed that. He said it's not just about the footage and what the footage shows, but it's about the officer's perception in the moment, and his perception warranted and justified the use of deadly force, not just for him, but also the other officer that used deadly force. So me just watching it, I felt there was an air of arrogance. And I'm not saying this on him on a personal level. I'm just saying him in his position acknowledged that this makes an officer's ability to kill someone. It gives them a Teflon coating where it's more difficult to convict an officer than it is for an officer to kill someone in broad daylight. And that's literally what this is saying. It's more difficult to convict an officer based on the language of the law that the RPD and the other officers are using. And it's a sad state of affairs.
And then I think one of the other thoughts that I had as I was watching the press conference is how little empathy is given to the victim in the situation, which is something that we seen with when the press conference was released for Tyrus Jones. You see that there is almost they speak about these things as if the person who was shot was like an inanimate object or not a real person, or like they're like it's a fictitious person. The only person that they humanize in these press conferences are the police officers. And I think that because they go to such extent to only humanize the police officers, people who are watching from afar don't understand that that's a tactic, that is a strategy. It's no different than why Tom McNamara won't say the name of victims. It's no different than why the Winnebago County Board Chairman wouldn't say Faustin Guaitigo's name. And I don't know, maybe I've missed it, but I don't believe that there's been any response from the Winnebago County Board Chairman about this. I don't believe there's been any response from the NAACP about this. I don't believe there's been any response from any local groups when it comes to this issue, and maybe I may be mistaken. So I'll continue to look and find and try to see if I can't find that. But that's something that is something that has to change. I think that as I was watching the press conference, I thought to myself how many. I was looking and seeing how many people were also watching along, and I think on WREX I seen about 100 people were watching along. I think at one point I switched to WIFR to see if the audio was a little bit better for me, and I seen about 70 people were watching along. I think that we just pulled up the video to try to watch it again. It was about maybe 2.5, 2.7 thousand views, which makes me think about when the press conference for Faustin the press conference for Tyrus Jones came out, the findings came out, and there were more people watching that. There was it was more of an attention on it, and I think maybe. I don't remember the exact amount of people that was watching, but it was it was exponentially more people who watched and paid attention at that press conference. Just speaking about the press conference, than paid attention to this press conference, and I believe that that is something that we have to reverse. We have to get to a place where when these press conferences happen, and that people understand the importance of these press conferences and the implications that these press conferences have, and that the city's all eyes are on it. And I believe, as well as I was watching the press conference, I was thinking about how when we need to get to a place where when these things happen, that we have more media that descends upon these things, and we have more media that is aware of these things, and and this issue becomes a bigger story. That's one of the ways it will become a bigger story, is when it is more media outlets invested in these things, or more media outlets trying to be involved with these things in some manner. And a lot of that has to do with fickleness. Some of those things are out of our control. Certain stories are juicier than other stories for as far as media is concerned. But I think it's our job to not care about how juicy the story is or how attractive the story is. And when somebody is shot by the police, it is a cut and dry issue for us, and we do everything that we can to make sure that the story is attractive to people, to make sure that the story is appealing or appeasing to people, and that people understand that there's nobody that's getting shot by the police or killed by the police in Rockford, Illinois, or in Winnebago County. That story stands alone. All of these stories stand with each other. They are all different pieces of the chapter of the book of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in Winnebago County and Rockford, Illinois. And I think one of the other things that we have to do is to get into the practice of every time one of these press conferences happen, we remember the other press conferences. We remember the other justifieds, and we treat each justified that comes down with the remembrance, with not treating it like it's this one justified. It's not just Faustin Guaitigo that was justified today. Tyrus Jones was justified today. Kerry Blake was justified today. Logan Bell, Mark Barmore, Geno Washington, Joseph McCormick, Shannon Graves, Mikey Guzman, all these people were justified as well today. I think, excuse me, sorry about that. I think one of the other things that I thought as I was watching the press conference was how close the justified for the murder of Faustin Guaitigo comes to the date in which Mikey Guzman was ran down by a South Beloit police officer, an incident that was also found to be justified. And I think one of the things that has happened so regularly is that we have seen how how closely within each other all these things are connected when it comes to just the calendar date. You know, it's a 12 months on the calendar, 365 days, 52 weeks, and there have been so many dates or weeks that have held multiple reminders of these incidents, or multiple anniversaries of these incidents. When the week Faustin Guaitigo and Jose Gonzalez Jr. were both shot, when Faustin Guaitigo was murdered and Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot, it happened the weekend before Jovan Fresco, the anniversary of Jovan Fresco being murdered. And Jovan Fresco was murdered on his birthday. Jovan Fresco shared a birthday with little Mike Sago. And so when we had the memorial when we had the vigil for Faustin and the remembrance of and the solidarity with Jose Gonzalez Jr. when we had that event and people were out here, we also celebrated Little Mike, and we also celebrated Jovan Fresco because and we spoke about how directly and indirectly all these things are connected. And here we are now 4 months later, where the justified findings have come out for Faustin Guaitigo, and we're days away from the 22nd when Mikey Guzman was ran down in the streets. And And so they say in 3 weeks we should be having the findings for Jose Gonzalez Jr. coming out. But if they take more than 3 weeks, if they get around to 4 or 5 weeks, they'll come dangerously close to releasing those findings on the same day that Tyrus Jones was shot by the Rockford Police Department, or on the same week that Tyrus Jones was shot by the Rockford Police Department. And that comes very close to the same day that little Mike Sago was murdered by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies. And so again, these things are intertwined with each other, interconnected with each other. And so those were some more of the thoughts that I had about the press conference. I think that now, as we pivot away from just the feelings of the press conference or thoughts from the press conference, one of the things that I want to speak about or get around to speaking to is reaction and response. And I think that for us as an organization, one of our reactions was having the press conference, which has been a staple of the May 30th Alliance when they justified the police terrorist attack that took place on May 30th, the police riot that took place on May 30th. Hours later, we held a press conference and we responded. When they falsely arrested people on July 31st and on August 1st at the Back to Blue counter protest, we held a press conference and we responded. When Tyrus Jones was shot by the Rockford Police Department, we did not have a press conference immediately. We let the family speak first, and we tried to take our lead from the family. But eventually, when we began to start a campaign to protest and to bring awareness to what happened to Tyrus Jones, we held a press conference. When the justified findings came out, and I would also say that in the midst of those things happening, Tyrus Jones' family spoke eloquently and beautifully about this issue and about how the issue had affected them as well. So I don't want it to seem as if we were the only ones speaking. Tyrus Jones' family spoke very well, especially his brother, about these issues and about exactly what it meant for them to deal with these issues. Also, when the justified findings came out for Tyrus Jones, hours later we spoke about what those justified findings meant for the community. When Denzel Duvant was assaulted and beat, it happened in January 5th. It was very cold out. We did not at the time have a press conference or have anything to respond to that in the same type of a manner. But I think that going forward, if that was to happen in January of this year, we would have that press conference, even in the code, even if it didn't mean that 13 or 23 or R-Star, any news outlets came out. What we have been doing purposefully and with intent is building our own platform, is making sure that our Facebook page has content regularly so that people can be coming here regularly. So that way when an incident like this, which is more out of the norm, happens, people can know a place that they can go to get information about it and hear people speak on it. And it will only be with the continuing of building our platform that we will get to a place where we can force other people to lend their platform to us when these issues manifest, and to our voice when these issues manifest. And so on April 10th, and after April 10th, when Faustin Guaitigo was murdered, and after April 11th, when Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot, on that Monday, we held a press conference here and we spoke about it. And here now, when Faustin Guaitigo's justified findings have come out, we've spoken about it, and so that is a form of reaction. That is a form of response. But one of the things that we have to have happen more often is we have to react more regularly. Not react more regularly. We have to increase that reaction. We have to increase that response. That was why we went to the Winnebago County Administration building at 8 o'clock after the press conference and laid chalk out and left messages about the murder of Faustin Guaitigo. So I'll just ask Kay about his thoughts about the importance of having an equal and opposite reaction to these justified findings coming out, and the importance of us having an adequate response to these justified findings coming out.
Again, I feel that it's key, not just for Rockford, but just in general. It's key to note that releasing findings sets a precedent in the community based on the power structure that releases those findings. So that's the first point. This was a precedent. This case was a precedent and an example that I'm sure can and will be used in the very near future. God forbid, but can be used in the future to justify another scenario in the event that the officers do go into someone's home. As far as a response, I feel that for the sake of humanizing the victim, and not, regardless of what news outlet, because they're all guilty of it. Regardless of what the news outlet is that slants a story to dehumanize a person of color, it's imperative for us in the community to have our own response ready to humanize the victim. Because more often than not, the victim is going to be dehumanized publicly, slandered publicly, so that there isn't a sense of connection or a person perceiving them as a human being first. But removing the human aspect, you can then discuss them in the terms of almost like how you describe a piece of furniture. I think it's imperative that there is always an immediate and ready response in regards to circumstances like this. What I will say, because I would be remiss if I didn't, the lack of response collectively from the black community is always deafening to me. Always. It never, I'm not callous to how the silence, how I interpret that. Because there are so many people, and I just want to say this briefly without going off on a tangent. There are so many people that attack this man sitting right next to me. So many that I read posts, I read comments, that critique and criticize heavily about what is right for us to be doing, what is right and wrong for him. And it can't go unnoticed that when the findings were released, who spoke? Who, and this is not a rhetorical, who spoke publicly? Did other organizations speak? And the reason why I'm saying that, no one person, no one group, no one outlet has to move forward and be the only one speaking. We speak because we choose to speak. Because we're not going to sit down and be quiet. Because we're not going to let it just casually be thrown out publicly, the information thrown out, and then it's just wiped off the face of the news the very next day. We refuse to let it be buried in the back of the stories, or just to let it be just a passing story. We refuse. So we choose, we make a deliberate reaction to speak. Now, with that being said, why aren't there more people speaking? I'm not talking about critiquing what we're doing. Why aren't you speaking at all? You have your own organizations. You have your own platforms. You have your own Facebook followers. You have your own social media platforms. This is a list of how many did you say since, what was it, 2000? How many did you say?
Which
52?
That's 1990, since 1990.
Since 1990, 50 plus shootings. Or in custody deaths. So we're talking about people of color, and namely black people, being brutalized or murdered at the hands of officers. And the city in 2021, this is post George Floyd now, the city after George Floyd. Where is that response, Rockford? That's my response to these findings is, what I saw on social media was no nothing. I didn't see anyone rally a response.
Well, I don't, again, we want to make sure that we don't know that that's 100% true. We haven't had enough. That was one of the things that I was saying. I don't know who has responded, who has said what things. We've been very busy, so I do want to be careful about saying that nobody has said anything. I don't know if the NAACP president has said something from her personal Facebook page or their personal Facebook page, or if different people have said things from their personal Facebook page. And again, we haven't had a chance to look through any more news stories or anything like that. But at the as far as we knew at the last moment, there had not been many responses to these things taking place.
Let me clarify that
But
point because you're making an excellent point. On a personal level, I don't know what anyone said, but for me to make this statement, what I'm saying is to contact the local media, whether it be the radio, television, or a major platform. That's what I'm speaking of namely. That's what I'm speaking of. So I do want to clarify my statement so that there's no misunderstanding. Someone may have, I'm sure that people with platforms may have spoken publicly on their social media platform from their heart or how they personally feel. But I'm talking about speaking on a platform where you're speaking on a level where it's helping to define a response for the actual community as well. And the reason why I brought that up is because there are other cases that still have to have findings released. So I'm saying that because there's more that we have to brace for as a city. As a city, this is not grandstanding. This is not beating on my chest or our chest or saying, look at what we're doing. What I'm saying is, as a city, there's more coming that we collectively have to brace for, to receive, and then to in turn respond to.
yeah, that is 100% true. We are still, again, it should not be. It should not leave the forefront of people's mind that we are still waiting for the findings of Jose Gonzalez Jr. to be released, or the findings into the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr. to be released, and we are still waiting for the findings for the police pursuit that led to the death of Raymond Jackson to be released. And in truth, if we're speaking about things that we're waiting for to be released, we're waiting for the video of Tyrus Jones being shot to be released. We're waiting for the video of Denzel Duvant being beat to be publicly released. We're waiting for the video from the high-speed pursuit that led to the death of Raymond Jackson to be released. So there are multiple things and multiple dominoes that are still yet to fall. And so I do agree with that 100%, that we need to be bracing ourselves for that, but also preparing for our reactions to that, preparing for our responses to that. And I do believe that even though having a press conference is important, even though I do believe having a press conference is important, I do believe that the talking that we do is important. But it can't only be talking and talking. I think one of the things that we're going to do tonight or in the morning at some point in time is create events for Saturday and Sunday. Create events for the next Saturday and Sunday for the next 3 weeks until Jose Gonzalez Jr., the findings for Jose Gonzalez Jr.'s shooting come out. I think that one of the things we have to do is in this moment is to try to reinvigorate the energy around this struggle. I think that every time these shootings take place and these murders take place, one of our jobs has to be to reinvigorate the energy around the struggle. When the findings come out, it has to be our job to reinvigorate the energy around the struggle. That does not mean that we can. That does not have to mean that we get 100 new people that get to be involved or 50 new people that get to be involved. If we only get one extra person to become more involved in the reinvigoration of that energy, then that is a job completed. If we only get one or two more people to start paying more attention to the things that we're releasing on our platform, then that is a job completed. And then it just becomes our job to add on to that and to multiply those things. But that is the work. That is part of the work that we are. This part of the process that we are in right now when it comes to the work, getting more people to have their bodies present at City Market, having more people to have their bodies present at City Hall, having more people to have their bodies present when we create these events and host these events. And again, we cannot allow ourselves to be discouraged because we don't have 1,000 people in the streets right now. We cannot allow ourselves to be discouraged because the city is not on fire right now. We cannot allow ourselves to be discouraged because there aren't more people paying attention. We only are in a position where we can allow ourselves to be more determined because of the lack of those things. We should be more determined because it is not 1,000 people in the streets right now. We should be more determined because the city is not burning right now. We should be more determined because it is not more people paying attention to these issues right now. But we cannot allow ourselves to be discouraged about those things. And so I think that one of the other thoughts that I have from all these things that have taken place, from these findings being released, is that, and this is pivoting a little bit, but to speak on some of the things, speak on the fact that the money cannot save you from police terrorism. Money may be able to assist you once you are in the system of mass incarceration and once you are in the system of jail and things of that nature. Having money may be able to assist you more, help you more out of those situations. But having money will not save you from a crooked police officer gunning you down in the streets. Having money will not save you from your child being gunned down in the streets. They'll pay you money after they gun your child down in the streets. And I think that's one of the other things that people maybe are not realizing in this moment is that Tyrus Jones' family is going to sue this city, and they're going to win, and this city is going to have to pay out money. Fausto Guaitigo's family is going to sue this county. They're going to win, and their family is going to get the county is going to have to pay out money. Raymond Jackson, Denzel Duvine, Jose Gonzalez Jr., and that money is going to be paid by us. It's going to be paid by the people who live here. And 80% of the Rockford Police Department don't live in Rockford. I don't know what the percentage of the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies that live in Winnebago County is. I'm not sure what those parameters are. So this is a little bit separate conversation from the Rockford Police Department conversation. But again, as it stands, Rockford police officers get paid taxpayers' money of Rockford. Then they go and live in a different city and they pay taxes to a different city. And then meanwhile, they come back to this city and terrorize the people and assault the people in this city. And then when it's time for the people in this city to get paid from that terrorism, the money comes out of taxpayers' money in this city. And the police officers don't even put their money in that pool of cash or in that pool of funds that ends up getting paid out to the victims. And again, those are hypocrisies. We live in a democracy of hypocrisy. And we have to wake up to these hypocrisies. And the only way we can get people to wake up to these hypocrisies is by highlighting them. And that is what we have done here for the last however many months. Is highlighting the hypocrisies, is making sure the hypocrisies are known, is articulating these hypocrisies. And so one of the other things that stood out to me at the press conference was Jay Henley said that Joseph Brulard was forced to take the life of Faustin Guaitigo, and that he didn't want to be in that position, and officers don't want to be in a position to be forced to take the lives of community members. And that is false. They were not forced to take Faustin Guaitigo's life. There were many other routes and many other things that they could have done to de-escalate that situation and save that man's life and bring him in one piece and bring him in alive. But they did not value his life enough to take those extra steps. And it's evident in the fact that weeks after this happened, the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies would be involved in another standoff type situation with a white man, and that white man would come into the jail alive and in one piece. However, Faustin Guaitigo, they could not find a way to do that for. They did not. There is not enough. There is not a. Those officers should have waited outside of that house and got somebody who was qualified to deal with crisis management to talk that man down. That man was in the process of having a mental health crisis. He should have been treated as such, and then in being treated as such, he should have been brought in one piece. And it doesn't matter if it took 2 hours or 8 hours or 24 hours or 46 hours or 72 hours or 90 hours. There is not enough. There is not too much time to wait to save a life. There's not too much time to wait to make sure that life is preserved. The only time that you feel that way is when the life is not of value to you. If those was that officer's son inside of there, that officer's brother or cousin inside of there, they would have had all the time in the day. They would have had all the time in the day to make sure that they came out in one piece. But again, because his life was not valued, because his life was not deemed worthy of their time, they took care of it in the manner in which they took care of it. I think, excuse me, sorry about that. One of the other things I want to bring up too that I think maybe be getting forgotten in all of this is that there is a language barrier between Faustin Guaitigo and his wife and his family and the police department that came. And they used that language barrier to their advantage. They used it as like a loophole to help them to be able to get into the house. And that is one of the things that you see regularly with police officers. If you do not know your rights, if you do not know these legal loopholes, and if you do not know the tricks and deception games that they play, they will manipulate you in an effort for them to do whatever it is that they want. Whether what they want is to search your car, whether what they want is to enter your home, whether what they want is to assault you and beat you or plant drugs on you, they will use every trick that they have in the book to be able to do those things. And so we have to remember that those are some of the things that led to Faustin Guaitigo being murdered. Deception is what a lack of patience, a lack of caring, a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. All of these things preceded Joseph Brulard shooting Faustin Guaitigo as he held a pipe. All of those things preceded that, and it is when we don't have that type of critical conversation about those type of things that you end up in a position where people like Jay Hanley dehumanize Faustin Guaitigo, and they dehumanize him from the situation on the stairs. They dehumanize him from that situation of action and impact. And in the process of dehumanizing him in that specific moment, in those specific actions, they also dehumanize every action that he took before then. They also dehumanize every good thing or every positive thing that this person did previously and up to that point. They dehumanize every good thing that they may have done in the future, or every positive thing that they may have done in the future. We cannot allow that to happen. We must shift these conversations to a place of empathy, to a place of understanding, to a place of caring. And if you are empathetic, understanding, and caring of the people in these situations like Faustin Guaitigo was in, it means that you don't allow those situations to end with the body bag. You don't allow those situations to end with 8 bullets and tasers and handcuffs. And so those are some more of the thoughts that I have about all those things. And so I think that one of the questions I have for you, Kay, as we sort of continue to pivot through all these things, with the findings coming out for Faustin Guaitigo, with us waiting for the findings for multiple other cases, with us having dealt with findings coming out before, and this was one of the things that Ari sort of touched on. What do you think it will take to get to a place where these acts of police terrorism are not being ruled justified?
Me personally, I feel like it's going to be a circumstance where it's going to be a victim of such a reckless circumstance that my perspective would have me to think that it would take literally a child being beaten or brutalized or pepper sprayed or shot or an elderly person, that it would take something that extreme for it to really have an immediate intense, an immediate intense response. Now, as far as the specifics of basically, the verdict coming down the way that it came, it just made me think that a lot of the hypothetical what ifs that people were giving as to what we should and shouldn't be doing out here, to me, all of that stuff just it blew away like fall leaves, because here I am having to listen to the words of people that aren't willing to go this far for the sake of change, massive, very real change, not tokenism. And they're telling me how wrong I am to do this, but then we see another verdict, and we see a verdict of not, where it's not deemed excessive, but it is, but it isn't. Obviously, under the law, and picking it apart with a fine tooth comb, you find out that it is based on the officer's perception. But it's my hope that in this moment, that the black community really finds its voice collectively to speak in response to the verdicts. Again, I can't stress this enough. We have more cases that are about to be that they're going to have press conferences over, and collectively, we have an opportunity in history to literally prepare ourselves collectively as a community. Do I anticipate the other cases not being considered justified? No, I fully, wholeheartedly believe that they will all be, as crazy it is to even hear myself say that, I honestly and truly believe that all of the cases will be deemed justifiable. But in the same breath, I still firmly believe that the black community, the Latino community, we need to be, we need to have a collective consciousness, and we need to be rallied around the specifics. Even if people have ideological differences, or even social differences, for the sake of the universal display of the policing of black people in Rockford, for no other reason, that should be the platform that all of the social activist groups do galvanize. All of the clergy, whether they be white or black, do galvanize. All of the minority-based organizations, whether they have a national platform or just a local one, that for the sake of what is Rockford and how it's undeniable, and I'm sure there's someone itching to type a message. Well, if you don't something bogus to the extent of, well, don't do the crime if you don't expect a consequence, or people should just comply. We're not looking for gaslighting points. What we need is unity. We need a unified push with a collective consciousness in Rockford for the sake of the future aspirations of the children coming up, those that are in their 20s, the teenagers between the ages of 16 to 21, in that age range. It's critical, because we're talking about their future. The precedent that's being set repeatedly from case after case is simply this: the shootings and the use of deadly force are based on the officer's perception in that moment. So what does that mean? It means even if you have a FOID card, which is your legal right to carry a firearm, if the officer sees the gun in your car and pulls his gun out to shoot you, his feelings just trumped your right to have a firearm legally. If you're running away from an officer and he deems that a threat, he can shoot you dead. So what we're where we're at now, I believe that with this case there will be this case will be a precedent socially as as an opportunity to shift upward, and even as, and I'm saying this in regards to even what you're saying about having actions set up for the week, throughout the next few days, where the community can come out and we can galvanize and speak amongst each other and discuss amongst each other and have a unified front, because we need a voice amplified. We need an amplified voice collectively for the sake of these very reasons. Because even when Ari said, "Well, what is it going to take? What is it going to take, Rockford, as a city? What is it really going to take?" I'm tired now. I don't think I've ever really been this candid to even express my personal feelings on a matter, like how something truly makes me feel to my soul. But I am tired. I'm tired of hearing these verdicts. I'm tired of the power structure giving this a green light. I'm tired of hearing these verdicts on autopilot, no matter who's standing in front of a microphone. I'm tired of hearing these verdicts. I'm tired of people being hopeful of change, but not pursuant through their own convictions and desires to take that change and make that change happen. That's the condition that this city's in. That's the condition that we are collectively in as a city.
I think one of the other things is an important talking point, and I think right now what we'll just do is just keep on going through talking points and speaking about these things. We've only been on live. We haven't. This hasn't been that long of a live yet, and I think we still got some important topics to discuss. And I think one of the things that we have to discuss is what holding institutions accountable looks like. I think that I think that one of the ways that looks is us being involved in specific institutional events more often. And I say that to say that I wonder very much what the black people who are going to be down at City Market, the vendors, are going to be doing tomorrow. Are they just going to go about business as usual tomorrow when they go out there to City Market to sell their shirts or sell their drinks or sell their food? Or will there be some type of collective reaction to the fact that another a black person, an African immigrant, another person who looks like them has been found, their murder has been found to be justified by these institutions. And Rockford is the county seat. So anything that happens in Winnebago County or concerns Winnebago County 100% concerns Rockford. And so even though we have a mayor who will use the excuse that, well, the Rockford Police Department did not kill Faustin Guaitigo, the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies did, so there's no reason for me to make a statement about it. Us as a community cannot afford to have that type of ignorant mindset when it comes to these things. Anything that happens to Winnebago County Sheriff anything that happens to members of Winnebago County by Winnebago County Sheriff deputies is something that is important to people of Rockford and has implications for the people in Rockford. And so the people who are going to go to the Rockford City Market tomorrow that are black, that are vendors, even though they shouldn't even be going no matter what. Are there a plan to? Is there a plan to boycott City Market tomorrow as a vendor because of these findings coming out? Is there a plan to do something to bring awareness to Faustin Guaitigo's murder and it being justified? What is the action that people are going to take? And then again, I said institutions because City Market is an institution that has used the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies as weapons, as instruments of violence. They have weaponized the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies against protesters, against community members. And so they are inextricably attached to this issue. The same thing about the Winnebago County board and the Winnebago County courthouse where Jay Hanley's office is at, and even the Justice Center where Winnebago County Sheriff deputies work. All of these institutions must be addressed in some sort of a manner. That is what we have been outside of City Hall for. Sometimes people ask, why aren't you outside of the police district? And we aren't outside of the police district because we are addressing the institution of the City of Rockford government. Exactly. In addressing the institution of the City of Rockford government, we also address the police district 1, 2, and 3. We also address the police union. We also address the police department because the police union contracts are negotiated with people who work inside of here. Because police district 1, district 2, district 3, all of them send officers on a daily to come inside of here. Their assistant deputy chiefs have meetings inside of here. When these officers, whether they be in District 1, District 2, or District 3, gun somebody down or assault somebody or falsely arrest somebody and their loved ones sue, it is the people inside of here who negotiate what that money is, what that settlement will look like. It is the people who are inside of here who try to dehumanize that person so they don't have to pay as much of a settlement, and criminalize that person so they don't have to pay as much of a settlement. And it will also be within here that we will, and at this building and in this area, that we will be able to accumulate the power that is needed to adequately deal with the people at Police District 1, Police District 2, and Police District 3. And so that has been a way that we have been addressing the institution of the City of Rockford government. That has been a way that we have been dealing with these institutions. And I believe that being at Police District 1 does not necessarily have you dealing with the institution of the City of Rockford government. But being outside of City Hall allows you to deal with the institution of the City of Rockford government and also address and deal with the institution of the policing that goes on in this city. And so the same thing has to be happening. And before I move on to this next point, I also would say that part of that has to be us starting to have more community members coming to these city council meetings. Has to be having more community members paying attention to the rhetoric that is coming out of the city council meetings. I believe Bill Rose, who is an alderman here, just had a court date recently and is getting ready has a pretrial date getting ready to be set for charges that have been brought against him for a multitude of things. But we have to be paying attention to all of these different things that are happening because they all have implications on our society and our community. And it will, and whether people like it or not, it will be at the point in which we begin to have people representing the interest of the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice at every avenue in which this city exists, that we will get to a place where power is built up enough for us to absolve ourselves of these issues. And right now, the thing that we have been focusing on the most has been not bringing awareness, because we have done the job of bringing awareness, whether people want to admit that or not. But the job we are doing now is, or the work that we are in the process of doing now, is bringing these issues to the forefront of the consciousness of the society, to the forefront of the consciousness of the community, to the forefront of the consciousness of the city and of the county. And that work is the same way that bringing awareness was not an easy thing. It took us 14 months, 15 months or however long it has been from May 30th till where we are at now, give or take a month or so, for me to feel comfortable to say that we have actually done the job of raising awareness. It took us putting these memorials up downtown. It took us making sure that we had chalk down here every time a big event like Pride happened, or every time a big event like the 4th of July or Memorial Day happened. And in the midst of doing those things, we've also protested at those events. In the midst of doing those things, we've also continued to release content on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitter, speaking about these things. We've created a pamphlet. We have more pamphlets that are coming out. We've had a presence at Food Truck Tuesdays. We've continued our presence at City Market. We've continued our presence outside of City Hall. And so we've had the picture of Denzel Duvine up, and the press conferences we've had, newspaper covers that we've been on, and newspaper articles that have been written about the struggle that we are waging. And WREX and WIFR and 17 articles or news stories that have all been broadcasted to the city and to the county about this struggle. Those things have got us into a place in which the awareness has been risen. Yeah. Radio shows. NPR was another one of the things that have helped us with doing the work of raising awareness. And so I believe that one of the first times ever in the process of doing this, of being in this struggle, I'm comfortable to say that there is a check mark that we can, a box that we can check off. And the box of bringing awareness to these issues in this city, it has been done. When you trace back to May 30th, of last year, and you bring it to the date that we are at now, we have 140,000 or 150,000 people that live in the city of Rockford, Illinois. I'm not sure what the how many people live in the county, but I'm comfortable with saying that in the last 14, 15 months that we have got this message out to 50,000, 60,000, tens of thousands of people. And so getting that message out to tens of thousands of people does not always mean that they all agree with the message. It does not always mean that they all agree with the tactics. It does not mean that they all agree with the ideology. But what it does mean is that it has been brought to their attention. They have seen it. They have heard about it. They have had a talk about it, or a dialogue, or a conversation about it. And so it's now incumbent upon us. And I don't know what the ways to do this, because it was a time when we were trying to build awareness by being outside of the courthouse, by doing die-ins, by doing the overnight at the Justice Center that we did, by doing these different protests where we were trying to build the awareness. And at that time, I didn't know which things were going to build the awareness. I didn't know which things were going to be pivotal. I didn't know that it would be a time in which that chalk would get thousands of more people to know about this, to be aware about this issue and these issues. I didn't know that putting pictures and names and dates on light poles downtown would be something that would get tens of thousands of more people to know about these things. I didn't know that us basically creating content would be thing that would be able to get thousands of more people to know about these things. But we found, I didn't know that even being outside of City Hall before we began the occupation outside of City Hall, I didn't know that would be something we would do to get tens of thousands of more people, thousands of more people to know about these things. But those all are things and actions that we have taken, and we've seen as we've taken all those actions, this amalgamation of all of these different things coming together to get thousands and then to tens of thousands, in a place where I would be comfortable enough to say tens of thousands of people have been made aware of these things. And so and I do believe that each step that we go further from here will be a step that is harder. It will be a step that is more difficult. You know, it's like we sort of had this joke about the people coming down here and washing the chalk. The first white vigilante that came down here to wash away chalk came with just a cooler, dumped it off, and somebody watched their home and seen what he did, and they stepped it up a level. So they came with water, and they came with a push broom. Somebody watched their home, what they did, and they stepped it up a level. They came with 8 gallons of water and a power washer, and brought their wife along with them. Came with a two-man group to do it, 2-person group to do it. But there is a a metaphor in that, and that is that as we continue to do these things, the people that we have to deal with, whether it be the things that we have to deal with, whether it be institutional or individual, they will become more difficult. They will become more combative. They will become harder to struggle against. As we succeed, the path ahead will not become easier. It will become more difficult. These institutions will fight harder. They will pull out new tricks and new forms of deception and new forms of repression. And we have to not only do the job of getting ourselves prepared to deal with those things, but ingratiating more people into this struggle and preparing them to deal with those things. And so that is the part that we are at now for the consciousness, entering the consciousness and entering the subconscious as well. And I've seen that happen down here also. There are people who once upon a time, the chalk being down on the sidewalk, they could barely walk down the sidewalk seeing the chalk on the sidewalk. They so busy looking at it and feeling however they feel about it. And now some of those same people, they just walk right on by the chalk on the sidewalk. And I know for some people, they probably think, well, it's been normalized. The protest isn't working anymore because it's not grabbing people's attention. But the job of the attention has been done. We've got people's attention. Now what we need to do is to enter their consciousness for it to become some of these things to be normalized and normal. It needs to become normal for the chalk to be on the sidewalk downtown. Normal for these memorials to be on the light poles downtown. Normal for it to be people sitting outside of the city hall downtown. Normal for it to be people protesting 4th of July marches and Labor Day marches and all of these different things. And once we get to the place where these things are normalized, right, we will get people, and the normalization of it is the entering of the consciousness of the city, entering of the consciousness of the community. And at that point, we will get more people who were standoffish to be able to feel more comfortable to ingratiate themselves in the struggle and to participate in the struggle. And more people will come out on the 4th of July, not to participate in the 4th of July parade, but to participate in the protest. Will come out on Memorial Day, not to participate in the Memorial Day parade, but to participate in the protest. Will come down to downtown, not to come eat at none of the restaurants downtown or to go to City Market downtown, but to participate in the struggle that is being waged downtown against police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. There was somebody who was 16 years old when George Floyd was murdered in May 30th in the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice as we know it in Rockford, Illinois, and Winnebago County began. And they're 17 now, and they watched these actions take place for a year. And if they continue for another year when they're 18, they're going to step in and get involved. There's somebody who's 15 and watched these things take place, and they're 16 now. And if these things continue for another year, at 17, they'll get involved. There's somebody who's 12, 13, all of these things, all of these different people who are seeing these things happen. And as they get older and as more time passes, they will get closer and closer to getting involved. There are hundreds of people watching these videos and seeing this chalk and seeing these actions taking place and reading books and watching documentaries and films and online. And what is happening is they are, if you want to use the word radicalized, that's fine, but they are in the process of having a changing, an altering of their consciousness. And what they need more than anything is when their consciousness is altered and to the level in which some of ours have been, to have a place that it can work as an outlet for them to educate themselves, for them to inform themselves, for them to participate. And so it becomes our job to make sure that that outlet is there. It becomes our job to make sure that that platform is there. And so that is what we must continue to do through every justification, through every shooting, through every murder, through every false arrest. We must continue to do those things. And so I think one of the other things I ask you, Kay, is how do you see, because we have two more findings to come out, but separate from those two more findings coming out, how do you see this? How do you see the struggle continuing? How do you and when I say how do you see the struggle continuing? Some of the things that I talked about is being involved in city council meetings, getting involved in Winnebago. We don't really know much. We have in an honest to have an honest assessment, we have been more involved in the city business and city issues than we have in county business and county issues. And I don't think that that's something that can continue in this manner. Right. We must become just as involved with county issues and county things, and and eventually we have to pull that out to state things and national things. And so, what are some of the things that you see going forward that are going to be integral in the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in Winnebago County?
What I see right now is an immediate conversation that must be had from the mayor's administration to address just basically the glaring differences between these differences have existed for the entire history of the black community, but just on the level of the heavy policing of the black community, the police discussing raises and increases and hiring more officers and just their budgets increasing, but yet the other side of that same conversation is the lack of investment in the black community. And I feel that's a conversation that the community must provoke, because it to just talk about the incarceration rate or the brutality of it, the other social impact is the lack of investment and concern in the black community as a whole. The city is not taking a holistic view in increasing the education level of the black community or injecting any reasonable assets into the community as a response to George Floyd, as a response to the community at large, based on the needs that are outlined based on COVID and even prior to COVID. It's not that they don't understand that the needs are there. It's a deliberate ignoring of the fact that there is a disproportionate lack in the black community, comparatively so to the white community. The policing is a response to the lack. The policing that we see on a daily basis it's like watching a pressure cooker. The police are the cap to relieve the stress every now and then, because they're there to gauge the stress building up, but so that it doesn't boil over. They know that there's a temperature in Rockford, but they know that the political power structure set that temperature by saying, "Oh, we know that you need $10 million for this fiscal year, but we're not going to address that, and we're not even going to come close to giving you what you need." And I think that's imperative when you talk about how much money the Justice Center got at the end of last year. They got the additional $3 million.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it on the.
And then you have the Justice Center receiving a higher budget. RPD received even more money just recently. These things can't. Are we still live? These things can't be ignored on a social level.
Oh, it is? What the name of the
because we're talking about the precedence of the findings being released and the means of the police to have this air of this heavy over policing, as if, and I'm just going to be blunt with it, as if we are animals that need to be patrolled in a zoo. For anyone not paying attention, understand they're not just dehumanizing the victims for the findings. They're dehumanizing us collectively on a social level. I'd rather someone tell me to my face that they hate me than laugh in my face and act like they're just doing me a service by tolerating me. I don't want to be in anyone's face, in any space, anywhere where I'm being tolerated by another human being. I find that disgusting. I'm not looking for anyone's tolerance of me. If you don't like me, just tell me. If you hate me, even better, tell me so I know what I'm dealing with. But don't just laugh and smile in my face and give me this understanding that you're just tolerating me. And that's how I feel is the environment and is the air in Rockford right now, where you have this tolerance of the black community, but there's really no engagement of the city addressing the real needs of the community on a holistic level to where we are addressed collectively as human beings. It's not just the mayor not mentioning someone's name in a press conference or the findings where the person is being dehumanized for the sake of the officer being exalted. It's the demeanor of the entire addressing of the black community and dehumanizing the community collectively as if it's a zoo filled with monkeys that have to be patrolled.
Well, I think, and this is again gets us back to a point of getting more active with going to certain, getting the community more active with going to certain things. Whether it be city council meetings or they had excessive force meetings last year that we were going to, because we have sat in the excessive force meetings and we sat there when the former police chief Dan O'Shea, Irishman of the Year for 2021, sat up and said and called the community animals 2 different times. He referred to people in the community as animals 2 different times, and so it's not a surprise that that the chief of police referred to people in the community as animals, that Mike Dowkey, a police officer, referred to black women as having superhuman strength at one of the meetings that somebody was at, and that now Joseph Boulard is saying that one of the things that he noticed was that Faustin Guaitigo didn't appear to be affected by the bullets hitting him, and all of those things, whether the people iterating those things are conscious of it or not. These are all pieces of racist rhetoric. All of these things paint black people as something other than human, paint them as subhuman, paint them as not a regular everyday person, and so you have to treat them in a different way. We have to police them in a different way because of the fact that their bullets don't affect them, or because of the fact that the women are strong, are super strong or inherently stronger, or because of the fact that the police chief believe that they are animals. And I think that one of the things that has been a problem is that people haven't, a lot of people have not watched the video where the chief of police said that. I think it has a couple of hundreds of views. It doesn't have 10, 20,000, 150,000, 200, 500,000 views. And so there are a lot of people who don't even know the police chief said that. And so, again, that is not to, and I think we're in a place where people maybe don't understand that fully, but we are not trying to condemn people because they don't have the same actions or same ideology as us or have the same beliefs or tactics as us. All of us here individually have different beliefs and ideologies. Organizationally, we adhere to organizational beliefs and organizational ideologies. When we speak at times, especially on the May 30th Alliance page, I think one of the things we try to do is to find the balance of representing who you are as a person and also staying true to some of the ideologies of the organization. But with that being said, there are certain forms of thought that are counter to not our ideology or not our beliefs or our tactics, but are counter to the liberation of black people. Is counter to the progression of black people. And ignorance, whether it be willful ignorance or unwillful ignorance, is detrimental to the liberation of black people, because ignorance has never been used and never has been an instrument for liberating black people or helping black people. It has only been used as a tool to hold black people back. And so as a community, we cannot afford to just be okay with our fellow community members being in ignorance. Right. We cannot afford to just be okay with, I don't really feel like reading that story, or I don't really feel like reading that book, or, I don't really feel like going and hearing that speech, or I don't really feel like listening to watching this video or whatever it is. We can no longer allow that to be, I feel you, you know. No, it has to become, brother, you got to watch this video,
Right,
because you're
right,
not going to be able to be informed about what's
right,
going on until you see this video.
right,
And I need you to be informed because you talk to 20 people a day or 30 people a day. And those 20, 30 people that you talk to, they value your opinion. They value your insight. And you will be able to say things to them that I may not be able to say, or I may not be able to articulate. And we need you to do that. We need more voices. And the same thing is to be said for here. 1 second here. These batteries acting up, y'all. 1 second. All right, y'all. We got a fresh set of batteries. Mic a little crisper. And so we cannot afford ignorance anymore. The same thing goes for when these shootings happen, and these, like we were saying, when these press conferences come forward from these shootings. We cannot afford for somebody to say, oh man, I didn't get a chance to look at the press conference today. I went out on a date with my girl. I worked like 8 hours. I got home, played a game. I was tired. Okay, that's fine. You got to fit these 12 minutes for when this press conference came out into your day. You need to figure out a way to fit 20 minutes of seeing responses to it out in your day. You need, and then you need to, if you can talk about the new movie that came out with your friends and the new TV show that came out with your friends, excuse me, you can also talk about the implications that these findings have on us as a community with your friends and with your loved ones, because it's not until those things happen that we'll be in a place to combat this, because ignorance has been used as an instrument against us. Ignorance has been used as a weapon against us, and if we are going to be able to say no weapon formed against us shall prosper, we have to start breaking down the weapons that are formed against us and not letting them prosper. We can't just, we have to put actions to those things. You know, they say faith is dead without works. And so it doesn't matter if you believe one day we'll have equality and equity, or one day it'll be more justice. If you're not doing no work to get towards that, that's dead. That belief is dead. And so it's not about condemning the black people who are not taking the same actions as us. It is about finding a way to understand why they are not taking those actions, diagnosing that, and then finding a way to assist them with implementing those actions into their day-to-day life. It's not about, and then the black people, and then that also brings us to the conversation of the black people who do not want to do that, who do not want to implement ways of getting black liberation into their day-to-day life. Those are the black people who are aligned with the white nationalists and with the white supremacists, who also don't want to do those things, because that's also because this all the same things we're saying about the black community transfer over to the white community and any other community. Everyone should be bothered by the oppression of anyone and the exploitation of anyone, and the and the violence that is and the lack of liberty and things of that nature that are happening to anyone. And so that same way that we need to be diagnosing and finding ways for black people to implement forms of revolution into their everyday life, white people in the community need to be doing those things. Mexicans in the community need to be doing those things. Latina members of the community, Asian members of the community, Middle Eastern members of the community, because again, I can't be the best of what I can be and live up to my full potential until you are the best of what you can be and you live up to your full potential, and that goes on and on and on. And that's, again, these can't just be arbitrary sayings. I have to understand that if whatever I do through my day, I'm depending on you to help me. If I need you, if you come and you load up something for me every day for 2 hours, and that's how whatever business we in, you help me load stuff up, and I understand that I need you to come in at 8 and finish up at 10, and you come in at 8 and finish up at 10 when your mind is there, when you mentally and psychologically are in one piece, and that what you starting to deal with at your house is police officers is done arrested you, and now you go into these different court dates, and now you worried about fines, all of these different things, and now it's making it so that you got all this extra emotional baggage that's on you.
Right.
Or maybe your brother done been killed by the police, or your brother done got beat up by the police, and now you worried about your brother, you bothered about your brother, you worried about all these other traumas, and that's weighing on you. And so again, we don't always see the way that these things manifest in people and how they affect people. But they do affect people, and they do manifest in people. And again, that is part of what it means to be, for all of our destinies to be intertwined in a garment. That is part of what it means for all of us to directly and indirectly be connected to each other. And that's part of what it means when people say just the injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Right. Because the other part of that is me understanding that, hey, if they can do that to you and have you all fucked up going through all these different things, they could do that to me. I could end up in the same situation. I'm just a couple of streets away from it being me who got pulled over. Or if they could beat your cousin up or shoot your cousin like that, my cousin and your cousin, best friends, they be hanging in all the same places. It's a couple of decisions away from it being my cousin. And that is the place that we have to, these are the type of conversations that have to be had for us to actually get to a place of absolving ourselves of some of these ills and some of these things. Right. Was there something that you wanted to?
Yeah. When you even with the comment that you just made, what I was struck by was placing oneself, especially a black man in Rockford, placing yourself in the mindset, it could be me. That if you're not actively doing that, you're not really carrying the weight of these decisions and the historic implications of the legacy of these cases with zero convictions in regards to the Winnebago-Boone County Task Force. There should be a level of social consciousness to where when the verdicts, when the decisions are released, that you do allow yourself to go there and say, well, it could be me. Yeah. It could be me. Because when you start looking into the history and the specifics of each case, you could really chalk it up to being in the wrong place at the wrong time at the hands of an officer. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong perception of the moment. That based on that officer's perceived ideas of you being a threat, being unarmed, running away from an officer, situations like that where any black man in Rockford can find himself in a situation where, why did you run? Well, I was afraid. Something as simple as, that literally, it not being some super deep response. Why did you run? I was afraid. He pulled his gun out. I ran. I turned around and started running away because I was afraid. He unholstered his weapon, and I know that when I see the weapon come out, this is if somebody knows anything about the law. If I see the weapon come out, then the officer is perceiving a deadly threat because that's the only time he's supposed to unholster his gun. So if he's unholstering it and I start running away, I'm showing that I'm not a threat, but I'm also hoping I don't get gunned down in the process. That could be any one of us. So if you're not allowing yourself to go there, then how can you be proactive in making sure that it doesn't happen again? And that's where we're at. That's where we're collectively at. There's no right now as it stands today. There is no, and you tell me if you feel the same way. There is no precedent to counter. I'm not saying that it can't be, but I'm saying this is how I'm acknowledging it now. There isn't a precedent on a social level to combat the verdicts, basically stating this is the findings. So the extent of this is if a similar situation happened right now, the verdict would still be the same. Yeah, 100%. And then if it happened tomorrow, the verdict would still be the same. And if it happened 2 weeks from now, the verdict would still be the same in that case. And if it happened a month from now, the verdict would still be the same. Because the verdict that was that the cases were brought to
set the precedent based on the circumstances. So what I'm saying is, in my mind, if there's a domestic violence case and the husband runs into the house saying, "This is my house, I'm not leaving my house." If one of us has to leave, if she's outside, let her leave. I'm going back in the house that I'm paying bills for. The precedent that was set was, well, ma'am, if you give us the keys, we'll go in and get him. They didn't. They didn't rush in and break his door down to go apprehend him. They asked for the house keys to enter the home. But the precedent that's been set is, if a man during a domestic violent I don't during a domestic dispute, heated debate, or just in general terms, an argument, if he goes into the house that he's paying bills for, he's paying the mortgage or the rent, that he's saying, "I'm not leaving. Listen, I'm not leaving. This is where I live at. I'm going back in the house. You can leave." It's setting a tone and a precedent. And why am I bringing up this point? Why am I harping on this point now? Because the mayor has this program to address domestic domestic circumstances. So I'm using the precedent of this case in regards to what the precedent of what was birthed out of the last year with this whole domestic platform that the city is running with. This man went back into his house because as a man he's thinking, I pay the bills here. I'm going back into my home. So that I want people to understand that there was a precedent set. So if you are a man of color in Rockford, understand where the precedent leaves you. If they show up at your doorstep and you say, "I'm going back inside to the house that I pay a mortgage in," you have to understand the implications. Based on the officer's perception of that moment, what is that saying about your life, too?
Yeah. And hold on one second, y'all. Okay, and again, all the points that Kay just touched on, I do think were important. I think that's one of the things that we hadn't gotten into too much was the domestic violence. Not I want to say we hadn't gotten into the specificity of the kind of call that it was. And Faustin Tigo, most of these cases are usually a combination of multiple things. Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot, and it began as a high-speed pursuit, and then he was shot. So not only was it an act of macro aggression of police terrorism in the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr., but the high-speed pursuit in itself was is classified as a use of deadly force to engage in a high-speed pursuit. Same thing with Tyrus Jones. Tyrus Jones, it was a high-speed pursuit before he was shot and gunned down. And so that was a multitude of things. And so here there was a domestic call that took place, and there are multiple people on these memorials who domestic calls took place before they were killed. And then also, excuse me, there was I guess, being inside of his home. I'm not sure how to, what the proper classification for that would be. But that is also what happened with Kerry Blake. Kerry Blake was also murdered and killed inside of a home, inside of a house where he did not have hostages or anything of that nature. But one of the things that was going on just a second ago is we had somebody that was trying to hop on. I think we still got them here, so let me 1 second. Let's see if we can get it right. Okay. We have. I don't think I've ever added nobody on the May 30th. On the May 30th live before. I think this maybe we can something we can start doing more often. But trying to add while we try to add this, I would think that one of the other things that has to one of the other things we have to remember in the midst of all of these things is is these stories, the stories of these people's lives, the fact that these were people, it's a saying that I think is sometimes it's hard. This saying is a hard saying to, uh, it's a hard saying to digest when it's somebody that you don't particularly care for, when it's somebody who's done an action you don't particularly care for. And it's a lot easier to digest when you care about a person maybe and they've done action you don't care for. Uh, and so nobody is the worst thing that they've ever done. Nobody's as bad as the worst thing that they've ever done, and nobody is as good as the best thing that they've ever done. And I think that that is understanding humanity, and that is having empathy for your fellow person. And sometimes it's, I think one of the other things that doesn't get talked about is sometimes it's not easy to have empathy. Sometimes it's not easy to have understanding. Sometimes it's not easy to care about somebody because, quite frankly, everybody doesn't make it easy to have empathy for them or easy to have understanding for them or to care for them. Uh, but it's not our job to, again, because we have to shift the type of society and community we live in to make it more humane. It's not our job to only be empathetic towards the people that it's easy to be empathetic towards, or the people that it's easy to care for, the people that it's easy to be understanding of, because most likely the person who needs the understanding the most is the person that is hardest to understand. The person who needs the empathy the most is somebody who is the least easiest to empathize with. Uh, and I believe that we have to become more aware of what it means for somebody to fall through the cracks, and more aware of what it means for communities and generations and collectives to have fallen through the cracks, and to have and to be, Americanism is celebrated as is this as if it is this shiny thing, this great thing, this thing with all these bells and whistles that doesn't come, the American dream, and you can make it, you can be anything that you want to be here. You just got to try hard enough, and you got freedom. And the truth of the matter is that part of America is reserved for certain people. And at different points in time in American history, the people that is was reserved for look differently. At the very beginning of this, it was reserved for rich, was always been reserved for rich white men. They've always had it, but that it was a specific set of, if you were a woman, that was that concept of the American dream was not even a possibility for you. If you were indigenous or a person of color, those that idea of Americanism wasn't even a possibility for you. And as time has went on, there have been more people who have been integrated into that possibility of America, into that America that exists. But as Dr. King said, there are two Americas. There is another America, and the other America lives at the expense of the first one that we spoke about. The people who lack opportunity, the people who have opportunity have the opportunity at the expense of people who do not have opportunity. The people who have privilege have that privilege at the expense of people who do not have privilege. And there is marginalized and oppressed and exploited groups in this country and in this city specifically, who have never had a fair shake at life, who have never had a fair shake at existence, who the cards have always been stacked against them, and it's set up that way. If and so we have to start understanding those things. We have to begin to move ourselves away from this idea of putting the onus on the victim for not dealing with the victimization better. And we have to start understanding that, yes, it is certain people that from the moment that they are born until the day that they die, this society and this country will victimize them because of who they are and because of certain ways that were born. They are They are women who will be victimized for no other reason than the fact that they are women. It's women who will be exploited and oppressed for no other reason than the fact that they are women. That rings true for black women and for white women, and trans women, and Middle Eastern immigrant women that come over here. And if we always are looking at what this woman could have done differently to make sure that she was not being oppressed or exploited, or any other negative thing. We are not putting the onus on the right thing, and we're dealing with the effect. When you deal with trying to adjust how the victimizer deals with the victimization, you don't deal with the cause of the victimization. You're dealing with the effect of the victimization. And we have to deal with the cause of the victimization. And the cause of the victimization is the American society. It is the American value system. And those things must be addressed. Uh, and in the moments in time in which those things have been addressed collectively in different sections of America, or by America as a whole, or by the federal government, you have seen uh, you have seen the power structure shift. And so I say all those things to say that the beginning of all of these actions, the beginning of this type of struggle, uh, is in being informed.
Right.
It is in being informed. There's not enough. It is. It does. Marching is important. Uh, uh, the city market protests, different things. All these different things are important. The die-ins, all these things are important. But if you do not learn about these things and become informed about these things, you will never feel the fire that you need to begin to make actions about them and take actions for them, and to begin to figure out how you truthfully uh, can take actions that are conducive to you, to who you are, and to your life. Uh, and again, I do believe in the concept of by any means necessary. But I also believe that we are in a place and time in which we need to define the means that are necessary. And we cannot have people who are working with police officers who terrorize our community saying, well, you know what, I'm just going to take a few pictures with the police so I can get this grant money from the city. And that's the way that I'm trying to end police terrorism and mass incarceration and racial injustice. No. That is perpetuating it. We must begin to point out the people who are perpetuating it. And in doing that, it is so that way we can have an understanding as well of the type of playing field that we are dealing with. We must be playing chess and not checkers. And so if a black person is committed towards the idea of selling our people out, we need them to say it and vocalize it publicly, so that way our people are not being misled thinking that this person has some type of secret master plan, and at the end it's gonna be all good. He gonna shuck and jive for the white people, and at the end somehow gonna have suck and jive that's all out our change. He gonna distract the white people doing all this dancing and tap dancing. While he doing that, we gonna take our chains off. Uh, that is not what's going to happen. And so we must get to a place where we force these people to say, you know what, I'm okay with my actions not being for the greater good of the collective of black people. I'm trying to make sure I build generational wealth for my family. Okay, say that so we can put you over there with them.
Right. Right.
So that way we know that this is what this person's actions are like. So that way we can be able to highlight the hypocrisy within you.
Right.
And so that way we can be able to keep receipts on you as well. And that's not to say that you can't never change your mind. We want you to change your mind. That's the reason we keeping the receipts. And then in the midst of us doing those things, as we do those things, we will bring up a generation of black people who will not be lethargic about these issues. who will not be lethargic when these things manifest, who will be in tune with these things when they take place and when they manifest. When someone is shot by the police or assaulted by the police, falsely arrested by the police, it'll be second nature for them to demonstrate or to protest or to take some type of direct action. In other areas, in other cities, that's something that's happened. It's been built. It'll become instinctive. But again, it'll become muscle memory, not instinctive. Instinctive. It'll be muscle memory, and so that's why we have to continue to continue to formulate what it will be like, what our pattern of reaction will be like. They shoot somebody, we'll do this. They assault and beat somebody, we do this. We figure out what doing those things look like. We figure out how many people we need to do those things and orchestrate those things. They justify a shooting, we'll do this. We do A, B, and C. And so that's the process that we are in right now. One of the things that we write down here all the time is the whole world is watching. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But I don't necessarily think that means at this moment the whole world is watching this one live that's taking place, or at this moment the whole world is watching and paying attention to this specific protest that's going on, or to this specific act of police terrorism that took place. But for me, what I believe that means is that at some point the whole world will see these things. At some point, the whole world will be paying attention to these things. At what point that is, I don't know. But that's not part of my part to play. Part of my part to play is not to know, is not knowing when these things will take place and when that will happen. But part of my part to play is knowing that they will. And so we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep in mind that we are part of something that is bigger than ourselves, that history is being written in these moments, that the actions that we do take or don't take, the words we do say or don't say, will have reverberating effects throughout history and throughout time and throughout the future. And the things that may feel like big sacrifices today will seem like small sacrifices in the future in the grand scheme of things. And so I think one of the things, we have to, and we'll talk about this collectively as organization. And, I guess right now we're in a place where we've been having this live going for an extended period of time, and we've been talking. And I think in the midst of doing that talking, we've done a good job of progressing the conversation and not double talking and repeating the same things over and over. And so in an effort to progress the conversation, I think one of the things that is important is, and has been important for us, has been transparency. I think that that has been key. This is a very genuine thing. This is a very real thing that is going on down here. This is not something that is funded by George Soros or funded by any type of philanthropist. This is not something that is orchestrated by an organization that's been in existence for a long time, or people who've been activists for forever. This is, to me, it defies what the most Rockford thing happening in Rockford is happening outside of City Hall. Right. It's not happening on the murals that's on downtown. It's not happening with the people who are doing vendors at City Market. It's not happening with any of those things. The most Rockford thing that is going on in this city is going on downtown outside of City Hall. And with that being said, that means that with it being Rockford, it's not 1,000 people or 20,000 people or 50,000 people. It's not having a bunch of a bunch of national news coverage. And so, but I do believe that the continuation of it, the furthering of it, the building of the platform will get us to a point in which those things do take place, in which there is more attention, there is more people involved. What that looks like, again, I don't 100% know. But with saying that, right now, one of the things we have to do is, with the amount of people who are active and who are paying attention, we have to figure out what things we can realistically do as direct actions. We have never hidden the fact that we do direct actions or that there will be a direct action. Since our existence as an organization, anytime these things have taken place, we have had some form of a direct action. We have done it sometimes in coordination with other activists and other organizations. It's always been done in conjunction with community members, but there has been a concerted effort that we will no longer be in a place where police officers shoot somebody, people just are Facebook activists, or people are just angry on Facebook, or even sometimes it's not even that on Facebook. It's just nothing at all. Uh, and so, with that being said, one of the things we have been able to do has been the chalk. The chalk has also been something that has been uh, for lack of a better term, successful in the fact that it is a direct action. If somebody would say it to you, you would feel like, oh, that's not nothing. But because of the fact that Rockford is so lethargic, because of the fact that Rockford is so far behind and so politically unaware, we've been able to write "fuck the police" on the sidewalk and write the names of victims of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice on the sidewalk in chalk, and write pictures or draw pictures and write these different things on the sidewalk. Uh, and they've worked like somebody sitting in a lunch counter in the 60s would have worked. We've watched this putting these memorials up have worked, how people taking freedom rides in the 60s, worked. One of the things that, and this is one of the things that's important to remember, it is more grassroots movements that took place in the 50s and 60s and 70s that we don't know about than we do know about. And each one of those things were proverbial straws to break the camel's back of certain forms of segregation and a certain type of society that was being lived in. Whatever politically correct society we live in now, you can trace some of the roots of that back to the 50s and the 60s. And so with that being said, I think one of the things that we can do going forward and will do going forward, as we've been doing, is chalk and writing victims' names in chalk and leaving messages and about police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in chalk. I believe one of the things that we can continue to do, as we've seen with the memorials and what we did with some of the flyers before, is print out flyers that are uh, uh, complementary towards the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice, and put those in more places than we've ever put flyers before. I think one of the things that we can do is begin to, now that this has happened, and treat this as a catalyst moment, begin to set up maybe weekly or bi-weekly grassroots meetings where we can get the community to come out, even if it's only a small amount of the community, and we can begin to get that pattern set up, so that way we don't have to try to again, like perfect example, we don't have to try to find a protest to do tomorrow to raise awareness to what happened to Fausto Guaitigo. We was gonna be at City Market no matter what. And that's a natural platform, an organic platform that we have forever. They will continue to have City Market years going forward. We will continue to have the City Market protest years going forward. And every spring and summer, if they shoot somebody or kill somebody or beat somebody or rule something justified, we'll have that platform of City Market to go directly to. And at some point, again, when the community's political consciousness is hiding more, and the community's political awareness is hiding more, and political education is hiding more, the community will understand the type of tool that is, and the type of benefit and the type of outlet and platform that is. So it's our job to hold the fort and to hold it down until the community does. So that's the thing that we still can continue to do with the City Market Fridays. I have not, and I can personally say the Food Truck Tuesdays is one of the more complicated protests for me personally, because for a litany of reasons that I just won't get into right now. But I have not participated in I wasn't at we did do the Food Truck Tuesdays the last couple of Tuesdays. One of them was because of the weather. And this Tuesday, I just was not in a mental space to do it. I just wasn't. I've been in And I sort of alluded to this earlier. I've been in a very specific mental psychological space because of things that have been going on, uh, and a lot of it was the feeling of this looming over me, and looming over us as a collective and as a whole. Uh, However, we can go to the Food Truck Tuesdays, and we can participate in the Food Truck Tuesday protest. I think that we can take the chalk to different areas. I think that the Winnebago County Board. We've been at the Winnebago County Board. I think one of the things that we have to do is go to the Winnebago County Courthouse. I think that one of the things we have to do is we have to go to other areas of each state. And again, we want to be in the areas where it is heavy foot traffic and also where it is people who are more likely to not know about these things. And so the people who are already been traumatized by the police and traumatized by mass incarceration and racial injustice, they don't need the reminder. They don't need to be told. The people, we don't need to write "fuck the police" 100 times in a place where the police finna be beating everybody ass. They know it's "fuck the police" there. We need to write it in a place where people don't have to deal with the police often and say that, so they don't understand why anybody would say "fuck the police." And so I think again that's a thing that can be duplicated and done over. Uh, and so in saying that to you, what are some of your thoughts when it comes to the proper way for us to go forward from this point on after having this justified finding come out? And I want to say this as well. I think one of the other things we can do is take up more real estate down in at City Hall. Uh, Again, when I say that, I believe right now when you pass by, we don't have a signs out. We had Denzel up. I think that's one of the things that will be back up tomorrow. I guarantee you that. But I think that the presentation of what we have here should be altered and changed. And so, what are some of your thoughts about this as a catalyst and this as a moment? I think this is a moment. I think there have been multiple moments that have been pivotal in the occupation and where we have taken steps. Uh, uh, the canopy going up the first time that it did when we first got here was a moment. The canopy coming down when the police did it was a moment. Us putting the memorials up was a moment. Them tearing the memorials down the first time was a moment. The tone we set when we went and got the memorials back and put the memorials back up again was a moment. When they pushed us from being in the back was to the front was a moment. Putting up Denzel Duvant picture and him being assaulted, that was a moment. Uh, the Doing the ongoing teaching was a moment. Jose Gonzalez Jr. being shot and Faustin Guaitigo being murdered was a moment. And so we are here now where I believe this justification is another one of those moments. And so with the understanding of how pivotal certain moments have been, I guess really the question I'm asking is, what is your thought of the pivotalness of the moment that we are in right now with the justification of the murder of Faustin Guaitigo?
Uh, I would hope that because of the timing, because everything there's a timing to everything. You can do a person can find themselves very easily in a position where they're doing the right thing, but it's the wrong time. So I think to answer the question that you just posed, I feel like it's imperative that Rockford, that the Black community collectively does leverage the awareness of the specifics. I believe even today in the press conference, um, that it was expressed that um, based on um, uh, having the information on the file available, it is going to be available to the public. Uh, so I'm saying all that to say this, that we have a perfect opportunity, not because of perfect victims, but because of timing. I We have to take advantage of the opportunity of uh, there's a level of timing that we have to move forward quickly with, to set up conversations with the mayor, to talk about defunding, to talk about making major shifts in our immediate our, in our immediate area. Um, at the end of the day, nobody should take this lightly. Whether they're no one should take this lightly. No one should just gloss over it and just let it be, you know, let it be a circumstance of just another day, because that's not what it is. It's not just another day. It has a significance. Um, and as a community, we are going to have to fight collectively to reap any upwardly mobile benefits. Case in point, Rockford has cannabis money. So again, Rockford brought up the power structure. It was brought up that that in basically looking at the historic nature of the black community receiving what it asked for. Um, those are other parts of the depth of this conversation. I don't. I think to sum up my answer to your question, I can sum it up this way. I don't feel, based on the timing that we're in collectively, that this conversation is due a surface level collective conversation. That it can't be a surface level discussion. That it it has to be something that will translate from a discussion to an action. A general consensus, uh, a base of an acknowledgement and understanding, but then some very real energy placed into a follow up. That it's not a matter of pinpointing people by name who may be social activists, or focused on an individual, or even a specific ideology. We're talking about addressing the needs of us as a people, and we can keep it that simple, but yet be very uh, impactful, because it would be us saying the same thing collectively for that to be uh, impactful enough to cause very real and present change. Because right now, the environment that exists right now today in Rockford, based on the information that came over the last 2 weeks in regards to the police and money, their their budgets are going up, but yet we have this direct effect to the policing in Rockford. So to address that policing, there is a focused conversation that all of us can have, all of us, in regards to us as a people. We can start there, just discussing us as a people.
And I think that's a very a good point, and I think it's a good point to sort of get ready to bring us to a close here. We're coming up on 12:20, so I thought it was important that we had a longer discussion for this. I thought that it was important that we try to get as many people to be able to watch this live as possible and to tune in at different times as possible. One of the things that we've found has driven up the traffic that we get and the amount of people who see this on their feed and their timeline is the length in which that we host the live. So that was something that we felt was important to do. Usually on Thursdays, me and Antar have a discussion with the justified rulings coming out today. That sort of shifted that around a little bit. But I do think that one of the things that tomorrow or Saturday, me and Antar do is try to have a discussion about this as well, and some of the implications of it as well. And also, we're going to do, for anybody who may watch on separate platforms, we're going to do an Instagram live, TV live video about this specifically. Some of those things, some of the things we'll talk about there will be touching on these same subjects and reiterating some of those same points. But again, naturally, because it's a different conversation, there will be new points that are brought about as well. So please tune in and watch that. If you follow us on Instagram, share that on the Instagram page. Anybody who's watching this on their Facebook page, please share this to your Facebook page, share it in your Facebook story. Even if you're not watching it live, if you're watching it after the fact. City Market protest tomorrow or Friday. Come out to City Market, not to patronize it, but to protest it. We will be having events this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. We'll have the time set up tomorrow, but we're going to use this as use is not the proper word, but this is a catalyst moment. This is a important moment, and we need to. I think it's incumbent upon us to act upon it as such, and just even if it's just building muscle memory, begin to build that muscle memory of being in motion when these findings come out like this, and when these actions take place in our community. So we're going to end this the way that we end all of these lives here. We're going to say, rest in power to Demetrius Bennett. Rest in power to Mark Barmore. Rest in power to Logan Bell. Rest in power to Kerry Blake. Rest in power to Geno Washington. Rest in power to Mark Barmore. Rest in power to Philip Johnson. Rest in power to Jasper Banks. Rest in power to Suzette Babler. Rest in power to Shannon Graves. Rest in power to Mikey Guzman. Rest in power to Lil Mike Sago. Rest in power to Joseph McCormick. Rest in power to Eddie Patterson. And rest in power to Faustin Guay Tigo.